Higher.
Ew.
Nearer.
Longer. Faster.
Cyflymach.
Gwrando.
Listen.
Engage. Cysylltu.
Cynrychioli.
Represent.
Someone that I've known for quite a long time, despite his youthful looks. James is the CEO of Coordinate Sport, has over 15 years of experience working in a variety of settings, sports coaching, active education industry. And I've got to say that the podcast, the drive phase that James presents on, is an absolute must listen in terms of content. If you haven't checked that out, I'm sure we'll give a plug at the end of the presentation for that podcast. A former student of Cardiff Met or UIC back in the day, a top sprinter, and if I'm not mistaken, previously competed at the Welsh Championship. I was going to say 2005, 2006, but he's here to talk us through leadership in a sporting context. So a very warm welcome to Mr. James Moore from Coordinate Sport. Afternoon, Jay.
Thanks very much, Chris. Appreciate the intro there. I'm just going to try and share my screen if everyone can.
Was it 2006 Welsh Champs?
Maybe it's a long time ago, but yeah, I probably wouldn't check the results on that one. For the performance. Right, let me just share that. Can everyone see my screen okay there?
Yep, we got it.
Yeah, thanks again, Chris, and thanks for everyone, for Hannah as well for inviting me to give a bit of a talk today. It's a pleasure for me to share some insights from kind of my I guess my career in sport and launching and growing teams and businesses. Hopefully we're able to share some insights that are translatable to leading the club. I guess, like Chris said earlier on, if it doesn't quite hit the mark, then Hannah did invite me, so it'd be Hannah's fault. For me, just if I could go on to the next slide. So now, can we see that now, everyone? Yeah.
Yeah.
So a little bit about me. Chris gave me a bit of an intro there. So from my background is sports business, but I actually started out at UIC, but started out my first enterprise was Indoor Athletics Academy that we used to run from a place called the Star Centre in Splots in Cardiff. I don't think it's there anymore, but we started out with that and managed to be quite successful with that, partnering with Welsh Athletics at the time as well, and then managed to grow that into some other brands and other businesses that eventually led to us creating a software tool that we use to manage our business, and now we provide that to others, which is Coordinate Sport. So there's a few of them on the screen there. What we're going to try and look at, I'm a big believer in using technology to be more efficient. So everything James was alluding to in his presentation really kind of resonated with me. And as I said, this is just my take, and this is kind of using lessons learned from business and trying to apply them into a club situation. But professionalizing your club, I was a bit wary about putting that as a title, but it seems to fit with the strategy from Welsh Athletics. And it's not about becoming a professional organisation. It's more about using the strategies, processes, approach to organisation that you would in business. I guess these are the areas we're going to cover over the next 25 minutes or so, which is initially defining your club. What type of club are you? We're going to look at setting a medium or long-term vision, which it seems like a lot of you have been involved with the strategy exercise with Welsh athletics, so it might not be strangers to that. Building team and culture, again, seems to fit, and how we're going to communicate that across all of your members and stakeholders. And then also looking at, I guess, standards and milestones, and in the terminology James said, the values and the behaviours that you can hold yourself accountable to. And then also looking at how we celebrate and review these strategies as we move forward. Right. So first of all, what type of club are we? So I guess my view on this from when I was an athlete till now is slightly different. I know what type of club I'd probably be involved in now rather than 10 or 15 years ago. But I guess to define your club type as such would be, I mean, there's a few different ones. So are you a social club? Is it all about people just having a great time, connecting, being part of the heart of the community? Are you looking to develop young athletes? Are you all about winning? So are you like the Real Madrid of athletics in Wales? Is it just about the trophies and medals, the number of international athletes you have? Or are you a family club? Chances are it's probably going to be a mixture of all of those to some extent, but it's good to clarify this. So when you're not, I guess, aligned with what type of club you are, then that's when conflicts arise, and you might have some issues internally in terms of being pulled in different directions. Once we've kind of established this, what type of club we are, and again, I've did a little bit of research looking at some of the club websites, and I see everyone does kind of have a vision on there. For me, this would be my starting point to kind of underpin creating any type of vision. But once you have that, we're looking at creating a vision that we can lead behind, basically. So if we don't have this, if we don't know kind of who we are and we don't know where we're going to, so once we know who we are, we're going to set our vision for the future. And this is normally long term. The strategy for us, like I said, 6 years. This could be 10 years, 20 years. It could just be like, this is who we are, and we're all a family club. We always have been. We're always going to be that. Generally, if you're trying to make change, you might just set a timeline of maybe 10 years to work towards. When we're setting the vision, this is just the way that I've always done it in my organisation. Someone a lot wiser than me taught me this, but we have kind of the 6 stages of putting that together. So projecting into the future, like we've just been saying. So what do we look like in the 10 years? What is it actually that we're trying to achieve? Then we're going to determine is kind of our purpose. What are we here for? Purpose and position our club in. If it was business, in the market. If it was obviously in clubs, it'd be position the club amongst Welsh athletics, I suppose. So is it that we are a development club, and we're great with working with young athletes up to secondary school age and developing them, and then they might move on to university or to another club where they can maybe have a bit more opportunity to compete or take their career further. That could be one. You might be just an elite club, and all you're about is getting the medals at the Welsh champs and getting as many high quality international vests that you can. Chances are it's probably not that singular focus, but just to kind of illustrate the point. And once we've determined the purpose, we'll look at describing that. So getting clarity of the vision, describing it in 1-2 sentences if possible. And I noticed that on a lot of the athletics clubs, you do have that there. So that's great. When we're pulling together, one thing that we always need to do is consider everything, really. So one of the big things, maybe not in business so much, because in my background, I've been kind of starting things from scratch, startup level, so not much history. But clubs, you've got such great history that you don't want to kind of throw to the sidelines. You want to kind of embrace that and bring that through when you're creating a new vision for the future. Also looking at considering your members, considering the wider strategy of Welsh athletics, and also the opportunities in front of you. So it might be that something's happening in your local area and you could really take advantage of it. Whether locally, let's say demographics shifting, a lot more young people, young families moving into the area. So you might want to consider improving the youth section or something of the club. So just things like that to consider wider than just what's going on at the track. And then referencing. So referencing competitors or competing clubs or your local rivals or clubs really that you want to be like. So I mentioned kind of joking earlier about being the Real Madrid of South Wales or whatever you'd want to be, but that might be something you want to aspire to. You might have a club that you really admire, and if they're within reach, everyone's contactable nowadays. It might be that you can reach out and ask them how they did it and get some ideas from them, or read their strategy and their visions. And again, focusing in on the Welsh athletic strategy, which does kind of resonate with what we're talking about in this presentation. So that was good. And then finally, we're going to look at documenting, and we'll talk about that now. So documenting all of our vision and our goals, and what's next. So once we've done that, it's about defining success. And this is probably one of the key points, really. If you've got a vision, that's great. A lot of people, especially in business, might write a big business plan, but then you stick it up on the wall or print it out 20, 30 pages long and just put it on a shelf and never really look at it and dust it off every year or dust it off every 3 years. So having that vision and going through that exercise of creating your strategy, you want to be able to measure against it. And so what gets measured improves. So we normally would like to set a time scale for that, and that's going to be shorter than the long-term vision. So this could be anything from weekly. So you could have certain success metrics that you might have for a club night. So it could be that you might want to attract 50 young people down to the club on every Tuesday, and that's one of the metrics. If you hit that, that's a success, and you can celebrate that. All the way up to monthly, annually, 3 years, 3 yearly. That could be a timescale for you. And I guess we touched on the metrics. They can be anything, but they just need to be tangible, something that you can measure, for you to be able to see all your hard work that you're putting in as volunteers and giving up. You can actually see that you're moving forward. So it's not just like an arbitrary opinion-based success. It's actually tangible. I know athletics is at the high end pretty cut and dry. So you train all year and then go to the championships and you kind of win or not. But in terms of developing the wider club, I think it's wise to have some other metrics that you can measure along the way rather than just the normal annual ones. Key success factors. So major keys for me would be things like, in the case of a club, would be things like facilities, funds, obviously, people. If you've got in your vision that you want to, let's say you want to be one of the biggest clubs and you want to attract a lot more, you want to go to, you have 300 members now, you want to be at 600 members. You have to look and see if you're, what that looks like when you are at 600 members. Do your facilities stack up to that now? So is it a case of you want 600 members, but you only have 2 toilets at the track and you need to invest in some additional facilities, whether it's changing facilities, etc., which then informs the next part of your strategy, which would be raising funds or attracting new coaches because you've got more members. So all that kind of aligns. And the final one for me is just visualization. So we just asked the question of, so we set the timelines, which are, let's say it's 3 years. What does the club look like in 3 years' time? And if you can imagine that, then you'll know it kind of helps you with all the considerations on the right. So if we have a vision of our club in 3 years' time is going to have 600 members, it's going to be active in various X number of competitions, we're going to be recruiting, or we're going to have a junior section, or we're going to be working in local schools, we're going to be signed up and deploying the starting blocks program, whatever it is, then that's going to impact on all the considerations on the right. So, and it's quite an easy task once you start thinking about it that way. If you say, right, if today, the setup that we've got today, the processes and the procedures that we have in place right now, if we were to double the number of athletes coming through the door, what impact would that have? So it might be that straight away we haven't got enough coaches, we haven't got enough whoever's doing the admin or signing people in and out might be a bit stretched, to say the least. We haven't got enough time, so you're going to have to recruit new coaches. Just being a larger club in general, the committee might change, the shape of that might change. You might need to look at some specific roles, whether it's someone with health and safety skills, to be on the board of trustees or the committee. An increased focus on if all those members that are joining, all the athletes that are joining are all young children, young people, we have to have an increased focus on safeguarding, outreach, whatever it might be. And likewise, you can see as we run down the list of considerations, equipment, you have enough equipment, you have to look at that. And then all these things generally come down to funds. So at this point, we could sit down and say, right, in 3 years' time, if we're going to actually achieve this, we're going to need to start raising funds now. Like, it's going to normally takes us a year to put an event on, a fundraiser, to try and find a sponsor. It takes a long time. So we can start taking actions towards that now. So yeah, that's where we get the success factors. Second. James touched on it in his, and I think the kind of terminology used in Welsh athletics is values and behaviour. So this is the same thing. So this is how we create an environment and an experience. So for and it does have to align with what we're saying. So we've said we've got this big vision, this is who we are, that's what we're going to achieve. And then if the behaviours don't line up with that, then people get disillusioned quite quickly and don't enjoy what they're doing. So I think from my point of view, my experience of, if you talk about business, I've never really had never really had a job. I've always like kind of started my own businesses and worked for myself, but I always had an idea of, I want to create an environment that I actually want to work in. I know a lot of people don't enjoy their job, and as running the club, you're in that position to kind of create that for everyone, for all of the stakeholders, and it's almost looking at internally, does everything match up? So for all your athletes, coaches, members, officials, how do they feel about being part of your club internally? I mean, an example from my past was English schools. From an athletics point of view, English schools, I used to take it really seriously. It was like, as a teenager, 15, 16, it was like the biggest competition you could attend. And I'm like, I've obviously teenager full of testosterone, going there to win. I'm really serious, want to make the best of it. And that just didn't align with my county at the time. So I'd do that, everything. I'd be really meticulous, have all my equipment, everything lined up. And then they'd given me my kit that I was going to compete in. And it was, I don't know how to describe it. I think it was cotton, or it felt like maybe it was wool, but it was about 20, 30 years old, didn't fit, super tight. But if you can imagine like a white vest that your granddad might wear, but is in yellow and blue, shorts made out of the same material, didn't fit. And that was like a massive, for me, it was a massive distraction, took my focus away. Probably I was in a bit of a bad mood as a stroppy teenager, didn't really want to, felt like all the confidence I had was everyone was laughing at me or whatever. But I think for me, that was just in the line of like, I was going there as trying to win, and that's all I was really worried about. But then it was teachers giving up their own time and volunteering, and there was no funds for buying new kit and whatever. So it's just not their fault. It's just, it wasn't really aligned. Whereas you could look at other counties and they'd obviously invested, so they're looking the part. They've got all matching tracksuits, etc. It just maybe gave them more of a sense of belonging, or more of an engagement with the actual county. So that's a bit of one from my background in terms of athletics. But I think it's key to kind of look at that from your own club's point of view. I do have, hopefully I can share it on here, the All Blacks. So if anyone's seen this before, and if that's changed. So the All Blacks, probably, I know we weren't supposed to talk rugby, but All Blacks, they have some of their principles, right? So and we all know, if you think about, when you think as an external person thinking about the All Blacks, we all have our opinion on them, but it's generally about winning and being the best, or one of the best for a long period of time. And you can see there some of their principles. Maybe you might need to change the wording on some of these in your club. Maybe number 6, you probably change that to something a bit lighter. But in terms of setting that out and documenting it and sharing it with the club, that's really important. So I think that helps us move on to communication and the way we'd communicate this out. For me, this is the main one really, and it's probably where the most lessons learned for me in business that might translate. my businesses have all been about service generally. Coaching, we had a big coaching team, maybe 50, 60 staff at certain times. And recruiting and finding the best people is always tough. And we always had a problem. You get a problem sometimes as you grow in, you're taking people on quickly. And we would get issues with coaches that we took on. They just weren't a good fit, maybe not professional enough, or just didn't fit with what we were trying to achieve, different opinions. And it wasn't until we implemented what I've been talking about and actually communicated that to people on arrival into the organisation, and actually when we were recruiting them, that this didn't change. So I guess not in order, but I'll go into inducting people. So once you've got this information, we found a massive spike when we were inducting people with a full induction process, explaining exactly what we're expecting. And basically the sentence is, this is how we do things here. You can link that to everything on there. So it's like, this is our company, this is our club, and this is how we do it. This is what's important to us, and this is how we behave. And generally we saw that a lot of people would leave at that point, right? So we've recruited them and it's a bit disappointing. You spent all your time, then they get to induction and leave. But we didn't get any issues after that, if that makes sense. So we used to get a lot of issues with people down the line, 6, 9, 12 months. It's a lot more complicated when someone's working for you. So if you can set the tone initially, then it can really help in terms of, you'd rather someone step away at that point, because it just means that your induction process is right. You might have slightly got it wrong on recruiting, but they've realised that this isn't the right place for them. If that makes sense, it's not a right fit, so they can move on. In terms of communication wider than that, though, we're always trying to consider external as well as internal communication. So we're talking about our vision. This is all about leading our team, leading our members, but there's the external factors, which would be how people view your club from the outside, right? So that could be your rivals, the NGB, so Welsh Athletics. You're gonna how do you look to them, right? So it's if you're well run and you've got a strong identity, strong vision, then that might bring more opportunities to you if they can see that's what you're doing and you're making big development goals, impact. Sorry. Talented athletes, how does it look from an athlete's perspective if they would like to come and join you? And that's not from another club. That's more, I feel, from other sports in general. So if you're trying to recruit athletes, it's generally going to be the most competition you're going to have is, I guess, rugby down in Wales, or football, or any other sports that they could do. So you've got to be attracted to them. And if they go to the rugby club or the football club, and it stands out to them as well organised, clear vision, really engaging, and inspirational, then they might choose that sport rather than athletics, and that would be a shame. The other one as well for me from external would be sponsors. So obviously there's funders and fundraising that you can do, but sponsorships are easier to get if you can showcase what the sponsor would get out of it. So if it's just that please sponsor us because we are we need a sponsor, we need some money, that's great, and you might find someone who's kind and wants to do that. But at the moment, everyone's in that position really because of what's been going on. So if you can articulate a story to them and communicate that, then it's a lot easier, and it's a lot easier for them to kind of see the impact of their funds on your club. If you've got the metrics that we were talking about, you can track how well you're doing against your vision. And then just internally communicating with your officials, your athletes, your coaches, all the members. How do you do that? How do you make sure that everyone's on the same page? It might be that you want to, once you've completed this, you might reinduct everyone into the team. You just got to make sure that everyone's in sync. In my organisation, we have a couple of key principles which are around accountability and ownership. Essentially, I think Chris said earlier on, people make mistakes. It's not your fault. You just everyone makes mistakes. We try not to make the same one more than twice, but it does happen sometimes. But yeah, if you're accountable to it and you own it, and you try and fix it, or you stand up, that's all you can ask for. And then just efficiency is our other one, which is a key one, which is about being quality, doing quality work rather than just busy work. So no one wants to just be working well, no one wants to work 12-hour days, working late, if you're just doing the same kind of admin. So it's like, can we put things in place to be a lot more efficient, a lot more effective, and yeah, hopefully get more out of the time that we've got. And then, yeah, celebrating success. So this one kind of goes without saying. We're talking about celebrating the success, but my main one on here would be just not waiting until my old club I used to be with. They used to wait. You only ever talk about success. Maybe a bit of a taboo word. The club at the time, you only have it once a year on the awards evening. We give some awards out, and I noticed when I was looking at some of the club sites, there's some really great ideas going on. I don't know if it's a Wales wide thing, but it's kind of like club member of the month, athlete of the month, things like that just can go a long way in the middle of winter when you're training and there's no competitions. If someone's getting recognised at that point, that's great. And if you can tie this in with the goals and the short term metrics and targets that you've got, then it just helps to keep people along for the ride with you. And then my takeaways, I'll run through these, and they do. I was surprised actually when I was listening to James's opening remarks. They do fit with the vision that you're setting. So kind of embracing change, and we have, especially now, if you stand still at all, you're left behind. Like the rate of technology, how it's advancing. If you don't get on board, essentially you're going to be outdated really quickly. That's from a business perspective, but in general, I said, there's plenty of people who didn't believe in mobile phones when they were introduced, and or didn't believe in social media, and now everything's through Facebook or whatever it be. So it's key that you kind of don't have to adopt everything, but just keep your finger on the pulse and just keep reviewing things. You might want to build that into the committee, someone who's just out there looking at things that might help the club. And if it doesn't take too much time to adopt, then I'd bring it on board and give it a trial and see if it works. Being business minded, so that's from, again, you're volunteers and you're giving up your time. Your time's precious, so it's not about being running the club as a business, but it's just about being efficient with your time. And when you're not wasting it, so if you're going to the club and there's a lot of, I guess, procedures or processes and systems that aren't in place, and it's making it really difficult for you to do what you want to do, or to make an impact in the club with the time that you're providing, then we can do something about it. We can put something in place. We can change it. We can adopt a new model of working to give you a bit more efficiency. And again, assuming most people, 99% of people join the clubs as members and volunteers to make an impact on the club, rather than doing certain things that like mindless admin or things that could be done another way. Having an open mindset fits with what we're talking about. I think for me, this is key, really. I think it's obvious that everyone attending today, you've got the open mindset. So you've come on. Like I said, a lot of what I'm saying might not hit the mark, might not be relevant for your club, or you might have already done it. You might have this all in place, but the fact that you've attended today means you're looking for ideas. You're looking for ways of improving your practices, and even if it's just one that someone's mentioned or one of your colleagues mentions in the breakouts, then it's worthwhile. So attending these type of events is great, and having that mindset when you go into this process is key. So we have a line that we say in board meetings, essentially. So we have our vision, and we have a question that we ask when normally, if you get frustrated and you're doing something, if you ask yourself, is what I'm doing at the moment taking us towards the vision that we've set? So just that simple question. And you might be having an argument with your fellow committee members or whatever it be, but if you can stop and ask that question, it might be that if the answer is no, then probably we shouldn't be doing it, right? So there's a lot of things that you just do for the sake of doing them. And if you can ask yourself that question about, is it taking us forward, and particularly, is it taking us forward towards the long-term vision, then generally it lets you know if you're doing the right thing or not. And I tend to ask myself that when I'm replying to emails or trying to clear my inbox or whatever. It's something you have to do, I suppose. Right, and yeah, this next one, avoiding distractions and internal politics. I know I know how well on the committees and the boards of trustees and things that I've sat on, there's generally something comes up that may be distracting, and it kind of links with the one below. So there's a lot of what's the best way of putting it? I guess I did want to show the video of the committee meeting that went viral recently with on Zoom, and you could tell in that meeting I'm guessing that has been bubbling up for a few months or years before it all kicked off, and there's the issues that were there. But essentially, if everyone's on board and we're all aligned with what we're trying to do, then we can have those frank conversations and we can talk to each other and we can say, look, what is the underlying issue? Generally, it's something that's happened in the past, or it's something that a disagreement, and if we need to be able to kind of agree to disagree and move on and get consensus, and I'm sure that's not happening in most of the clubs with here today, but it does happen. And my other one, this one, no energy vampires. This is one, just a personal one that I have, where there's always someone who kind of sucks all the life out of everything. Probably thinking it now with me going on. Got a break in a bit anyway, so you can have a nap then. But generally, energy vampire is someone who is always negative. Basically, someone who's in a meeting, and we're talking about moving forward. They all want to talk about the past, or they want to talk about what can't be done rather than what we're trying to achieve. And what we try and do with those people is find out what the actual reason is, what their issue is. It might be that what we're talking about is taking away their role, or taking away their kind of power base, or their tasks, and they feel a bit left out. Or if you can't find out what it is, it might just be that's who they are. And we've got another saying, which is we can't have snakes on a plane, which essentially we're trying to all we're all traveling in the right direction, and we don't want someone on there who's going to potentially bring us down. So for me, it's key to have the tough conversations and air our differences when we can, and try and move forward as quick as possible. And that's about it for me. I've got my Chris said I'd plug it, but we've got a couple of things on here. So we do a podcast, and it's leaders in sport. So I think I'm going to share these slides, and you can have a look at that. We do every week we have a weekly interview, and we just talk about people's leadership practices and how they've built up their organisations. And another one, we do have a little resource area that you can use. So we do like blogs and things on there. So this one might be key for that, having those tough conversations. I want to give some feedback and stuff like that. So that's me, Hannah. I don't know if you've got any questions. Apologies again for the technical difficulties at the start of that. I just started getting all the notifications from my emails at once for some reason. Don't know if you saw them, but
Not a problem, Jay. Thank you so much. I mean, and at least you weren't on mute, because I was convinced that was going to happen with somebody at some point today. So
yeah, exactly.
thank you ever so much, Jay. I'm sure everybody else really enjoyed that as well. And I think there's some really, really good key take-home messages there. There's lots of good positive comments coming through in the chat as well, Jay, saying thank you and really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's great.
So that's really good to see. What we'll do is we'll give everybody a bit of time to just digest that, and I know Jay's going to stick around for the next sort of 10 minutes or so. So we'll go to a break, and if anybody has got any questions whilst they're on the break and they're thinking about things, just pop them in the chat and we can answer them directly that way. I think Chris mentioned at the start, for the break, we're going to chuck you all into some breakout rooms. Hopefully you'll all reappear when they end, just to give you guys a chance to have a chat to other people in the room and catch up with some friends. So Tom's going to launch the breakout room. A little notification will come up and you'll just have to join the breakout room, but we will see you all in 5-10 minutes. Okay, great stuff. Thanks again.
Thanks, Jay. I think some good messages in there for everybody to take away. In terms of top tips, talk about creating a culture and bringing people with you. I think that's what clubs will want to do. I mean, what are some of the things that you've tried that have worked, perhaps with the businesses you've been involved in, and the various, because like you say, it involves quite a lot of people. How do you get everyone to buy into that? Yeah,
definitely. I think we use one tool. I don't know whether it fit actually with clubs, but we use Slack, which has really helped with that, because we were finding that just from an employment point of view, everyone was using like using WhatsApp groups, etc. So it's almost like away from what's going on. Whereas Slack, you're able to essentially engage everyone and kind of set questions and set different channels where people can discuss things. But probably the biggest one has been the induction process. Is just massive for us. It's like it's almost that like you might be with the clubs, they might be doing a lot of outreach, going to schools and really working hard. But that if you don't have the induction or just even that process, you're thinking of it as almost like a customer service process, your first experience of coming to the club, and how that essentially what that feels like from a new athlete or new member joining. And if you've got a really nice, warm, welcoming induction process, and within half an hour you know all of the key members of the club, you know who the different training groups you can see and what they're doing and what they're all about, then I think that'd be a really positive. I know in the past when we've run things, and probably for yourself when you starting blocks takes off, you might have that where obviously we do a lot of work in schools and we do a lot of work outside of a club structure, and we'd send children once they'd finished with us at a certain age, we'd send them down to the local clubs, and they might not have a good experience and they just come straight back, because it's a like quite a big transition to go down and train at a track or go and train at a rugby club, whatever. And if that, I guess that warm welcome's not there, then can turn people off quite quick, I think.
Yeah, I think with it's the difficult piece is it's bringing everybody with you, especially if you've got quite a vast coaching team and governance structure, for want of a better phrase, in terms of quite a wide committee and various different subcommittees. Is how do you get everybody aligned to those? You know, you talked earlier in the presentation around vision, having documented plans.
Definitely, I probably missed that out. To be fair, I think getting everyone around the table is key. Like you saying, when you made your strategy, you had hundreds of people involved. I think as long as their voice has been heard, then they're more likely. And if they're part of the development process, then they're more likely to buy into it. But yeah, it's tough if there's a lot of I guess baggage being like, if you're trying to make a massive change in the club, then it's going to be really tough, I think, to steer it away from where it's been. But if everyone can kind of understand that vision, that's why we always do like the visualization of it. And I don't know if I can share it with Hannah, but we use something that's like call it like an orbit chart. So it's like 3 circles, and the center one is like where we are now. And you can say to everyone, and everyone normally agrees, you say, where do you want to be in 5 years? And they'll say, from a business point of view, they'll be, all right, we're going to do £1 million, we're going to do 2 million, whatever that number is. And then if you put it in, and you can just ask the question, right, if we're doing that, then what you're doing now, is that going to work when you have twice as many customers or twice as many athletes? And if they could generally answer it themselves, you know, if there's certain things that people are holding on to, and they don't want to give up, whether it's like a really old school signing up process, paper-based, loads of whatever it be, and you think, well, we need to move to a different system, that's fine. Or a lot of times it's things like, I know all that information, I just keep it in my head, I know all the members, I know what I'm doing, I know all my customers. And if you can kind of show that, that's fine. But if everything else that we're working on comes off, then you're going to be having 5 times as much work. Are you still going to be comfortable with that? And they might start getting on board to like, well, actually, I do need some help. I think it's about just making sure that normally staff members, but members don't feel like they're getting pushed out. It's more that we're doing this to help you and to make your life easier. And yeah, it's difficult with the volunteer. Like obviously, everyone giving their time up for free. I think my focus would just be around everyone. You're giving the time up for free, so they want to enjoy the time that they're volunteering, not it to be stressful or not to make it feel like work. So that might be a way of driving a bit of change.
Yeah, I think so much of it comes down to those values and principle standards that you're setting, whether it be a business or a volunteer organisation. I think it's trying to get everybody aligned to the values of the way you're trying to work, the way you're trying to operate, some of the standards you're trying to adhere to, and the general principles behind it. I think that was the key bit, the piece on the slide that you put up there. Those values, principles, standards was a good takeaway, really.
Yeah, I guess it's being consistent with them as well. And like if if they're printed somewhere or they're everywhere, they're just consistently being seen, or even like a certain language that you use when you're talking to staff or customers, or sorry, it's business side, but if you're talking to young athletes, even if it's just like we don't use that phraseology when we're coaching or when we're talking to kids, we don't say that. We don't say might be about winning or effort or whatever it be. You could set your own vocab essentially for coaches, and they could just use that on a day to day. And generally with the induction, if you induct someone, you've always got something to go back to and say, look, we all agreed on this 2 years ago, and we all thought it was a good idea then, and we all signed up to it, and you kind of deviating from it. So make changes, I guess. Yeah, that's
yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff.
No questions for me.
Yeah.
I'll take that. To be fair, James, he referenced most of the stuff I was going to talk about as well. He took our thunder, Chris.
Stuff. Well, that's why I couldn't present half my slides. I was like, we have to skip over that bit. He stole the show, but I guess that's a good thing. You'd like to think we spoke about it beforehand, but sort of shared what we were all gonna do. But no, that's all good. That's all good.
A little description of the club. We see ourselves as a running family, really, not just a running club. We were started 30 years ago by employees from 3M's running from factory. At the moment, we've got 145 members, and our training usually takes place in locations around Swansea in the summer, and in the winter, we use Swansea Athletics track. We are really lucky to have a number of coaches. We have 5 KIF coaches and 7 LIV coaches at the moment, which has been very useful over the last few years. Okay, our membership. We range from under 21 to over 7 of people of over 70 plus, and we also have a range of abilities. Okay, a year ago, COVID-19 pandemic gave us many challenges. So how did we engage and motivate our members? How did we keep in contact with everybody, and how did we support everybody? And when we returned to training, the challenges were, how could we keep everybody safe? And how can we organise the groups and venues with our numbers restricted? I'll pass you over to 2 of our members to explain what's been happening over the last year.
Hi, my name is Nigel. I've been a member of 3M's for 3.5 years.
And my name's Alex, and I've been a member of 3M's for over 2 years.
So during lockdown, there are times when we haven't been able to meet as a club. And during those times, during the sort of strict lockdown, the club has been very helpful in providing lots of virtual support to its members. So the coaches have produced a virtual training session every week that people can follow. And on top of that, we've had circuit training via Zoom by one of the coaches. That happens twice a week, so we get some social contact, and that's been very positive and helpful. And we've also had virtual Zoom presentation nights and some quizzes. Again, that's helped to kind of keep in touch with members of the club, and it's been very positive and some well-needed social contact during what's been quite a difficult period of lockdown for lots of people.
And when we've been able to meet, when lockdown has been eased slightly, it's been wonderful to be able to meet. We've met in small groups. They've been appropriately socially distanced from others, but we were still able to meet, and it was great to actually see people and to have that to look forward to each week. We've also managed to have some actual races, again with appropriate social distancing on the track. The groups have all been much smaller groups, so that they adhere to all of the recommendations of Welsh Athletics, so we've all felt very safe with it.
But essentially what the club have done is that it's allowed people to have some social contact with people, either in small groups when lockdown has allowed it, or virtually through some social meetings or through the virtual races. So it's been a very helpful, positive experience during the last 12 months. Hi, my name's...
All right. Okay then, so what were our lockdown challenges? How did we motivate and how did we keep in contact with some of our members? I'll just go through each one of these in turn. So first of all, our weekly training sessions. We went from meeting everybody once a week to not being able to see anybody. So we decided to try to keep it as normal as possible. So every Monday, we would email a training session. They were inclusive and suitable for all environments and all abilities. We trained a theme every week, and we had several monthly challenges. We decided to involve the coaches, so each coach set the session each week. And it was fun to see what members shared on social media, pictures of their runs or how they felt about everything. This is just a quick example of one of our virtual sessions. It is in quite a lot of detail, but at the bottom, we always included the latest Welsh government guidelines. And as you can see, this is the one before you couldn't train with anybody else. The next thing that proved quite successful every week was our coach's corner. So each week, a different coach would write some tips for training or some tips on injury or something they felt they were interested with. And again, this has been saved on our club website so people can reference them again. This is just some topics that we included. Okay, highlight of our social week during lockdown. Paul and Linda Zoom circuits. Paul is one of our curve coaches, but he's also a qualified personal trainer. So twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays, Zoom circuits. They were really, really successful and really positive. We had 20 to 30 joined in every session, but why were they so good? It was definitely a mental and social benefit as well as physical. Excellently organised. Paul sends the same day as the circuits an example of what we're going to do. There are modified exercises, there are videos so we can try them out before. They are definitely social and fun. We can see everybody in their gardens, in their living rooms, in their conservatories. We've got some innovative members, what they're using as weights. We've had beer cans, we've had cider cans. They're definitely routine. And they're inclusive for everybody. There's also been a few children popping up as well. And these have still continued all through the year. Okay. This shows how much everybody believes in Paul's circuits and how useful they are and how much we enjoy them. He's had many thank yous from everybody. Okay, virtual challenges. When we were in lockdown, we sent a monthly challenge, which was similar to our usual Grand Prix. So there was a 5K one, there was a 4-mile one, and then everybody submitted their times so they could see how much they'd improved over the months. Keeping in contact. We did many things, but one thing that's worked out really useful, and it ties in with what Lloyd has just said. We've had 2 welfare officers. We're definitely a running family. We know a lot of our members really well. So since March, 2 welfare officers have been very proactive, keeping in touch with members. So some people who are shielded and vulnerable, some people who could be affected by COVID-19, but also people that we haven't seen or heard from for a while who weren't very active. They used email, they used messages, they phoned people. And I think this has been a really strength of the club. We kept everybody up to date with the COVID-19 updates as well as things changed with the Welsh Government. And unfortunately, with those people that took some liberties, so we did remind them of what they should be doing. Back to training. This was a big challenge. We used to train as one whole club, 60 of us together. So how could we prepare for small numbers? Quite a lot of us of the committee attended the Welsh Athletics webinars. We had regular Zoom committee meetings and regular coaches meetings. And we researched some online payment registration platforms. So we'd be ready for when we could start training. But because we couldn't all train together, what could we do? So we decided to have 4 groups in separate venues. This took a lot of organisation. But through talking to members and talking on the committee, we decided to bubble everybody. So we had 28 in a group, which allowed us for 2 coaches. These stayed as a bubble, which meant that we could track and trace easy if somebody had COVID. Members only mixed with the same people, which gave them a lot of confidence when they came out of being in lockdown. We did put friendship groups together. Unfortunately, people did miss the contact with each other, but they did realise how important it was that we all stayed safe. Where did we train? So we had to look at new venues. So we trained the venues within the same geographical area where people live. Everybody lives quite spread out around Swansea. So we chose venues close to where people lived. We chose venues that were quiet, had lots of space and away from the general public. We looked at the surface, so hopefully there were less likelihood of accidents and they were near to car parks. No two groups trained in the same venue, so we didn't have anybody crossing or talking to each other. I mentioned about our time trials earlier on. They were very motivational and people really enjoyed having something to do and something to pay in for training. Because we were cash-based and a cheque-based club, we had to look to an alternative. So we now use Eventbrite. We started off with full-on sport, and all our members pay for training in advance, and they've also paid for their membership for the year. We decided it was really important to keep accurate registers of who came to training, so we've shared those on a document so all the committee can access them. So they're updated straight after training, but also they were very useful for the welfare officers to see who was attending training, and also again good for track and trace. So when we returned to winter training, we had a problem. We could only get 3 hours of track time in Swansea University. So what could we do? So we decided to have 4 training groups. Our members chose a time for training, and we had to have one group that was off track. But again, we created new bubbles, and this time the coaches crossed the bubbles and everybody else stayed the same. I suggest an example of our training rota, so everybody knew where they were training and who the coaches were and what time, because the time slightly changed as well. So we had a problem when we had new members because we had full groups and we didn't want to turn people away. So we decided the best thing to do was add reserves to groups. So all our members told us by Sunday if they were attending training or not, and then we slotted the reserves in on a Monday. It was quite time consuming because it took somebody to coordinate and update the registers, but it was really successful as everybody who wanted to train trained. So we've had further lockdowns, we've had member shielding. So our virtual sessions have continued every week, and it has helped everybody so everybody can have access to some kind of a session. Looking after and treating our members. Pre-COVID, we used club funds to treat our members, but obviously none of these things are happening anymore. So what do we do with our funds? So we've decided this year to treat all our members to pay for their Welsh athletics and their club affiliation. It's been really good as an organiser and somebody to have a thank you, and our members have been really, really good. We've had lots of really positive messages, which is really, for me, it's made a lot to say that we're not just a running club, we are definitely a big family. So what happens now? What changes will we keep? Well, definitely we're going to continue with our online payments, and we're going to look at training. Are we going to keep small numbers? Or are we going to go back to big groups when we can? Are we going to offer more than one training session? Are we going to keep mixability groups? And what's going to happen about circuit training? Paul could answer those questions later. And finally, one of our members has been shielding, so she hasn't attended any sessions yet. So I will leave her tell you how she feels about it all.
The club has been absolutely amazing throughout the pandemic. During the first lockdown, they kept in touch with us through our Facebook community and through emails. They provided us with our weekly training session, and people were able to record how they did in Strava and through Facebook, sharing their progress. When lockdown was lifted in Wales, the club enabled members to get together in smaller pods, meeting in different locations on our normal club night. But for some of us, it wasn't possible to join those clubs for reasons.
Thank you, Chris. Fabulous. Yeah, really good presentation there. Thanks, Alison. Delighted now to introduce you to two people from over the border. So we've gone wild and we've gone outside of Wales and brought someone in to join us. So we've got Nicola and Campbell from Pitreavie AAC up in Scotland, and I'm delighted that they're joining us, because it's always good, as we've already said today, and it's been echoed throughout, it's great to share practice amongst ourselves, but also to look what's going on outside of Wales as well, and seeing the great practice and the great work that's going on there. So without further ado, Nicola and Campbell should be ready to go. Hopefully there's no technical issues, and I'll let them introduce themselves and go through the presentation.
Okay, so just get this going. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yeah, that's all up. Thanks, Nicola.
Yeah. Okay, so first I'd just like to say a really big thank you to Welsh Athletics for giving us this opportunity today. It was really great to be invited along. And Pitreavie AAC is predominantly a track and field club. So this is about our journey when we had a vision about the sort of off-track athletics side. So as Hannah said, you've got two presenters today. There's myself and Campbell Blair, who are both involved, and over the past few years we've collaborated together on this vision and journey, so we thought it's only appropriate that we do the presentation together, because we kind of bring different elements to the table in terms of our journey. So you can see here we do both represent the club, although I didn't take up running until sort of mid-late 30s, so it's not like I've got an athletics background or anything. I think we've both just got involved as parents, really, and then you get sucked into the whole running family. So I'm going to pass you over to Campbell, who is going to take you a bit, talk a bit about the background on Pitreavie Roadrunners, as we were previously known before we had this vision to grow this group.
Thanks, Nicola. Again, as Nicola said, thanks for giving us the opportunity to join this presentation. I think, as somebody said to me when you joined the running club, to just do a bit extra training, that we'd have to present to Scottish Athletics Conference and the Welsh Athletics Conference. I'm not quite sure they'd been quite as keen to get involved, but no, safe to say that we're delighted to be here. So yeah, as Nicola said, I'm just going to give a bit of background to Pitreavie Roadrunners. I joined the club in 2014, at the same time as my children joined the track and field side, and it really was just to get a bit of extra fitness. It was the club that was most local to where I stayed, and I thought it'd be a really good opportunity just to kind of get a bit more structured training. The club had been established as Pitreavie from 1956. In 1983, the road running side was created. So it had a long-standing pedigree in the community, and it was a really well-respected club. And while it had a great running pedigree through the 80s and 90s, it was still primarily viewed as a track and field club. There had been a few issues between the road running section and the track and field club over the years. Maybe people didn't feel that the road running section was getting as kind of given enough attention maybe as it should have, and that had created a wee bit of conflict, internal conflict amongst the club. There's disagreements with the committee, and people started to leave, and actually there was a bit of a splinter off in the early 90s where some people just went off and formed another club. So it's probably safe to say that when I joined in sort of 2014, 2015, that the club, the road running section, was in a bit of decline. When I joined, there was about 60 members. Over the course of the next two years or more, we dwindled down to 30 members. With really low attendance at training. The worst I can remember, 3 people turned up. Runners were coming along to get a bit extra support and finding they were running with no more than 3 or 4 people. And sometimes the runs they were getting asked to do were long training runs of 10 miles. The club was still following a training program that was really kind of baked in the endurance runs of the 80s and 90s. Tuesday was always long run night. Tuesday you went for an 8 to 10 mile run around Dunfermline, and people were just isolated. And it defeated the whole purpose of being part of a club. There was also no real formal training plan or structure. You know, it was structured sessions that were getting run, but you didn't know what you were doing. It wasn't promoted ahead of the session. You were turning up and you didn't really know what you were getting into. And that's quite a difficult environment, particularly for new members to come along to. The club didn't really promote either. We didn't utilise social media platforms. We weren't really promoting the club in the community. We weren't really gathering any real new membership, and it was getting quite a bit of a struggle. In addition, we had, you know, we operate in Dunfermline. In Dunfermline alone, there's Pitreavie, there's Carnegie Harriers, which are another big running club. PH Racing had just formed another club, so we had 3 road running clubs all within a quarter of a mile of each other, as well as kind of Jog Scotland groups, so more kind of social running groups. So there's a lot of competition in the area, and they seem to be being successful in growing their members at our expense. And, you know, people always look on the other side of the fence, as the grass a bit greener, and we were losing kind of members to other clubs who thought, well, they're bigger, they're better represented, so we'll join them rather than this. And, you know, by 2016, we were down to 30 members, and we were definitely at a crossroads. I'd got involved to help with some kind of administrative stuff and to kind of try and help kind of regrow the club, but it was a real struggle, and we genuinely at that point thought, was there any point in carrying on? Do you know, do we just let Pitreavie focus on track and field, and we accept that the road running group is kind of no longer kind of viable, and let members just go off and join other clubs? So we were definitely at a bit of a crossroads. So that was kind of the history of the group. Meanwhile, on the other side of the playing fields, Nicola had just started another running group, which she'll now tell you a bit about.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a bit about our Jog Scotland group. So I attended the Pitreavie Roadrunners session that Campbell talks about, and there was about 6 or 7 people who were super friendly, but their warm-up run, because there was no warm-ups back then, was probably my 5k trying to get a PB pace, and I was just so out of depth. So I saw an advert for Jog Scotland which said that you don't have to be a good runner to be a good jog leader, and it kind of ticked a box for me because at the time I wasn't the best runner. So I started to think about how we could get people involved who could potentially feed into this group, which was still very much the road runners. So in 2016, myself and another parent basically went on a course and qualified as jog leaders. Our vision was just to be very friendly, very inclusive, and the idea was to take beginners on a journey and get them to the point where they would then be interested in becoming a club runner, and basically try and break down that barrier so that we could feed into the club with the idea of growing the numbers again. So we started with the Couch to 5k programme, which we seen as our readies, and the idea was once they were up and running, then they would transition to our sort of steadies section, with the view that then you would just go and join the local club. So at the time we had sort of partnership with Pitreavie AAC, which I was involved with, but it didn't sit, it wasn't kind of under the club banner, it was just loosely linked to the club because it was a very tentative step, and still 5 years ago there was very much, I would guess, that barrier that running clubs were for serious runners, and it wasn't an environment for recreational runners, and Scottish Athletics were at that stage then where they were trying to break down that barrier, and it was still seen as a barrier by, I'd say, maybe people who had been in the running environment for a number of years. And then good mental health. We've got a huge focus on promoting good mental health. I mean, the benefits exercise give is just fantastic, and we really promote that. So we have members who will be just, you know, maybe, you know, just have a bad day, bad week, to we have some members who have quite serious mental illness. And for all aware of the I Am Here badge, all our members are very open and honest, and it's just, you come into that environment and you're naturally comfortable with it. So anyone will speak openly, including all the actual runners of the group. So the big issue we had at this point was the members weren't transitioning to the road runners, because they still seen that as a, oh, I'm not a real runner, it's only good runners, it's only elite runners who are part of a road running club. And I would say predominantly back then it was still quite a male orientated environment as well, and a lot of the social side and a lot of the sort of members you see within Jog Scotland are predominantly female. So we've got our little hashtag there. That was my colleague who set the group up. This is her vision, and that's been our kind of statement from day one, is we're getting Fife fit one jogger at a time. So it's baby steps, but since 2016 that those ones have become a lot of numbers. So I'll pass you back over to Campbell now, who is going to give a bit of background on, oh, back on. Sorry, a bit of background on the Pitreavie Road Runners. Have I gone back?
No, you've gone back. You were going to carry on with the plan.
Oh yeah, sorry, looking too far here. Yeah, so we started looking at a plan about how we could integrate the PAACE and RSGP, which is Ready, Steady, Go Pitreavie. And we looked at this sort of vision and objectives, and we basically came up with this, that as an integral part of Pitreavie AAC will help runners' abilities to achieve their personal running goals in a friendly and supportive environment. And our key statement here, and these sort of bullet points of, there's something that are really, really important to us, and there's something that have, you know, they've never just been written and forgotten about. They're sort of utilised, you know, all the time. And it's basically, we want to be inclusive to all abilities, structured, so training is structured and designed around sort of set goals and objectives, and you know, we want to train and develop together. We do also want to be competitive, so we do want to encourage participation in events and promote healthy competition, and that could be, you know, at small events to sort of larger events. And the big thing is we want it to be enjoyable, and we want to have this real team spirit through both running and socialising. And we want to be supportive, and as I've said, we've got a real focus on health and mental well-being. So the pathway that we looked at introducing, and this took quite a bit of time, you know, we didn't rush into any of this, is basically we've got here our overarching running club. Then we've got within it the little groups. We've got our readies, that's people who are complete beginners. We've got our steadies, that's people who are comfortable running 5k. They may want to stay at that, they may want to progress more. And then the idea is the pace is wherever you want your running to go, really. You know, you want to stay at 5k, you want to stay at 10, you want to go further, you want to get faster, you just want the social side. And we had these different training programs which Campbell sort of colour coded so that it was all very relevant to where you were in the plan as to what sessions were appropriate. And then we had sort of a revamp of events and competition as well. So lots of different things there that suited, again, all abilities, so that you've got people doing shorter distance to the longer stuff. As we say, the new training plan, we had new routes and sessions. Campbell mentioned earlier about really a lot of the, historically, you know, you went out and did a 10-mile run and within 2 minutes you don't see another person for the next hour, which you can do from your doorstep. So the idea was a lot more intervals, a lot more sessions where people were kept together regardless of ability. And the big thing is really engaging with the members. What do they want? It can be easy to, you know, you think you know what people want, but actually just ask and they'll tell you what they want and what they need. And then we had this rebrand, and this is where we went from Pitreavie Road Runners, because we don't just run on the road, we do trails, hills, everywhere. So we went with Pitreavie AAC Endurance, and that's how the PAACE came about. Okay, so on to Campbell this time for about promotion.
So yeah, as Nicola said, you know, we had a new name, we had a new vision, we had a new plan, but we still only really had sort of 30 members, and we had yet to kind of prove to the people in the RSGP group that we genuinely could be an inclusive kind of running club that supported their ambitions, despite the fact that they, you know, were still maybe in the mindset that they weren't a real runner and hadn't quite progressed enough to be part of a running club. You know, we really had the challenge was to kind of break that down. So, you know, the key thing was to really promote ourselves. So we hadn't really done that. So the new name and the new plan gave us something to kind of hook into. So we used that as an opportunity. We relaunched social media platforms, so a new Facebook site, an Instagram site, you know, a new website. We used all of those as an opportunity to spread the word of the club. You know, social media is absolutely fantastic. It's so easy to kind of tap into, and while not everybody uses it, you know, it reaches a really an increasingly wide audience. So, you know, Facebook page, new posts, promote the plan. We got some press, local press on our side, and we promoted a really kind of double page spread in the newspaper about our, you know, the long-standing club that was now rebranding and relaunching. And you know, the PAACE moniker was almost a little bit of a happy accident. We wrote Pitreavie AAC and Gorseinon, and it, you know, as we started to promote it on social media, it became a bit of a pain writing Pitreavie AAC endurance all the time. And you know, all of a sudden you realise actually, you know, the acronym is PAACE. How relevant is that? So again, we just promoted it and spread the word. And you know, and as the word got spread, you know, we gradually started to get the odd new member. They came along, they enjoyed, they were welcomed in, they were able to kind of get a feel that the training programme was inclusive, it was supportive. The odd person from the Ready Steady Go Pitreavie group, or the Nicola's group, started to transition across. They enjoyed it, felt part of the club. They went back to their group and fed back that actually, you know, this is a great group to be part of. Why don't you try it out? And you know, and gradually you just gain a bit of momentum. You know, we proved that the training plan, you know, could work. We proved that you could have, you know, anybody from 18 to 70 and from 18-minute 5k to 35-minute 5k, all training, doing the same sessions, whether it was, you know, 800-meter reps, long hill sessions, you know, tempo sessions, out and back runs. We kept them all together. So the worst that happened was you'd fall a little bit behind in a session, but when we doubled back, you'd get caught back up, and you once again we'd finish together. Or you would be running round a kind of 800-meter loop or a 400-meter loop, or doing reps back and forward. You were always seeing the same people. You were always included. You didn't feel isolated. You didn't feel detached. So we started to get a lot of positive feedback from that. The new events, you know, we started encouraging people to do park runs. We started people to get involved in the club handicap, which is a kind of monthly 5 mile sort of road race that we did, where everybody kind of gets a handicap and starts off at different times. More and more people started to get involved in that, and gradually you do start to create a bit of a team culture. We brought in our own kind of training kit, so we encouraged everybody to wear the club top, and you start to become more visible in the streets. Word of mouth, people start to ask more about the club, and they come along and try you out, and they bring their partner along, and they ask a friend, and before you know it, we've got a real bit of momentum. And as we grew, we went back to the social media platforms, and we went back to the press and got them to promote our growth. And again, it just stimulates more and more people and more interest. So before you know it, you know, our 6 or 7 a night became 15 a night, became 20 a night. And before the end of COVID, we had sort of 40 to 50 people turning up for training twice a week. And across the course of the week, you know, you're probably hitting 80 different runners and members. And that was really pleasing. You know, it proves that the hard work is worthwhile. But as Nicola said, we also wanted to encourage participation in events. So, you know, we encourage people to try out a race. You know, some people would hear race or event would immediately just go, no, that's not for me. But again, we encouraged them to go along. People car shared, people buddied up with each other. And, you know, we've started to get 30, 40, 50 people turning up for events. You know, so this is unheard of. You know, when you think we only had 5 people at training, and within a couple of years, you've got 40 or 50 people all wearing the club colours at the same event. People then at the events start to see, you know, more and more about Pitreavie. So, you know, a lot of these things can to snowball. You start to get a bit of a culture and identity. People start to socialise together. We had a Christmas night out. There was 100 people at the Christmas night out, and all of these things just, you know, create that sort of family feel that Alison talked about in the previous presentation. You know, creating a culture that instills that kind of sort of family and team mentality, and then we just kept promoting and promoting. And Nicola, can you move on to the next slide, please? And this kind of highlights the growth we've achieved. You know, I joined in so 2014, 2015 with 63 members. When renewals kind of finished, the next year we had 29 members. 2016-17 was when we started to kind of look at relaunching the group, and Nicola's group had also started to form. Still a bit of a challenge. No, it was a slow burn. You've got to prove to people that it can work. But we've got up to 40 members, and then it really started to snowball. There's probably a tipping point when you get to sort of 50 or 60 members, where people start to tell other people more and more often, and they bring people along. And it only takes a fraction of members to bring somebody else along, and all of a sudden you're kind of going through that 100 barrier. 141, 167 members before COVID kicked in, and we were really quite concerned about the impact of COVID. How do you keep a group of that size engaged? And obviously we could go into a lot of the COVID initiatives we've done, but actually really interestingly, a lot of them mirrored the 3Ms initiatives, was keeping people engaged, virtual training plans, virtual events. We created a different Facebook page called the PAACE Positivity Hub, which was about people sharing their experiences and sharing their stories and keeping everybody engaged. And it's probably fair to say that the club probably now feels stronger than it ever has, despite the circumstances. We've actually grown our membership by 60 or 70 members in over 2020 and 2021. We kept encouraging people, and I think people saw the fact that we were working hard to keep people supported through COVID, and thought that was really positive and wanted to get involved. We always treat every new member as a bit of a prisoner, you know, so somebody inquires and we immediately pounce on it. We give them all the information that they want really quickly. We get them involved really quickly, and we let our fellow members know that there's new members coming along. When they come along, we introduce them to everybody, people buddy up with them, and we try and, you know, obviously hold on to them all. Scottish Athletics also had what they called a Keep On Running initiative. So they were knew that a lot of people had got involved in fitness during lockdown, you know, both to help their mental health and just general fitness in restricted circumstances. And they asked all the Scottish clubs to try and get involved to promote the initiative, and maybe do their own initiatives that could support that. So we offered free membership. So we offered anybody that got involved in running, wasn't already a member of the club, we offered them free membership where they could come along free of charge and get involved in initiatives. We incorporated them into training bubbles. We allowed them to join the club and join all the relevant pages and membership benefits. So we actually got 50 people through that initiative, and what we're now hoping is they will become fully fledged members when renewals open again. So we think those figures are kind of proof that the culture we created and the plan that we put in place really worked. And on the kind of other side of things is a competitive side. That kind of shows the number of runners that started to get involved in our championship events. So as Nicola said, we tweaked our championship to cover speed, cross country and endurance, noting that some people had different preferences for the types of events that they want to run, the terrain they want to run on. So we actually have awards for a range of different event types. And last year, actually 10 different people won an award, some of whom had come through from Nicola's Ready Steady group, which has shown that we are supporting that transition through. We've got 100 runners, logging 434 kind of results in 2019. And we've seen an equal kind of participation in the initiatives that we've run through COVID. I think it's on to the last slide. So yeah, say a lot of the stuff that you maybe hear us talk about is stuff that you guys will already do in your own clubs, but we thought we'd kind of just summarise some of the things that we feel has benefited our journey. So the PAACE takeaways. So have a plan and some structure in place. It gives you something to promote. It gives you something to send out to new people who are inquiring about joining the club. Be visible, promote yourselves, wear the same tops, promote yourself to the local press and various other channels that you can. try and create an identity and a team culture that people want to feel part of. People like feeling part of something. Be inclusive. It's easy to talk about being inclusive, but you've got to, there's other clubs that we've got experience of that say they're inclusive, but actually all the training is really designed for those who want to run 5Ks and 10Ks really quick, eyeballs out training sessions every single week. That's not really that inclusive to somebody who's relatively new to running. Try and keep the group together. It creates a kind of really that team mentality. Don't be too technical. We'll never start talking to people about VO2 max and lactate thresholds. People, most normal runners don't really understand that stuff. So explain training sessions in a language they understand. It's conversational. It's a hard effort. It's close to this pace that you would normally run for your park run, or it's what you'd normally run on a Sunday when you go out for your easy social run. Keep members engaged and ask for their feedback. Everybody's got ideas. Nicola and I aren't the only two people in the club that have ideas for the right sessions or initiatives. Get people involved, make them feel part of it. And we've had lots of great ideas for things we could do in terms of new training sessions or initiatives. Recognise all achievements, not just those who win awards. No, the reality is very few of us win awards, but a lot of people achieve their own personal objectives. So recognise that. So we're always promoting stuff through the website and on social media pages. Encourage socialising outside the training nights. Christmas nights out, going out for drinks, going out for walks, going out for runs, whatever it is, try and get people involved. And then that does say get people involved. That's a really interesting one for us. If you go back 3 or 4 years, the committee of the Pitreavie AAC was all predominantly people who were involved in the track and field side. Now, actually, the PACE side has probably got that many experienced people and good volunteers into the club that most of them are now involved in roles on the committee. So the committee is now more predominantly road running members, and that's because the people with great knowledge, great expertise who wanted to get involved. So that starts to benefit the wider club as well. And actually the wider club started to adopt the training gear that we brought on board, and so actually the wider club now feels more of a team. And have fun. Running and being part of a club should be enjoyable. So make it a fun environment. So yeah, that's what we've done. Nicola, I don't know if there's anything you want to say just to close off.
Sorry. No, I mean it's been an incredible journey, and it's been something that's, I'd say, has probably been quite a life-changing experience for myself in terms of like my own growth and my own sort of self-belief, and just seeing what other people achieve with help and support in that whole running family community. I just think it's been absolutely incredible, to be honest. So yeah.
Thanks, Nicola. And it's absolutely wonderful to hear what you guys have been up to. And I think a lot of people sat on this call will be thinking, oh yeah, we've been doing some of that. We've been doing some of that. So really reaffirming what they've been doing is some good stuff. And I'm sure for lots of people as well, it will be sparking some ideas of things that they might want to look at doing next, and certainly thinking, well, yeah, that's a good idea. I could try and put that into our club. I think that's been really, really useful. I wanted to just actually pick up on something that I think Campbell said just towards the end there, around how now the wider club committee has got a few more, well, predominantly road runners on there, and how that's been a real benefit to the club. And I know, Nicola, we chatted a little bit about how starting PACE has really benefited the wider club in terms of volunteers coming in and things. I just wondered if you wanted to expand on that a little bit more, because I think for the track and field clubs that are here, that might be something that's really beneficial for them as well.
So it was interesting looking at the figures of the age sort of categories from the previous presentation, because I would say we pretty much mirrored that. So when you're getting more into the sort of social running side, you are looking at more what would be classed as masters athletes. And I think our own, if you looked at our own curve, it would be very similar, where we do have a lot of members who are hitting the sort of 40s, 50s mark. And these are people who don't have necessarily young families or have the same commitments that parents who are coming to a club are involved, so they've got a bit more time. They're in the club through choice. It's not through their kids, it's through their own, and they want to give back. And when you're getting to the sort of 50s and 60s, you're looking at people who have possibly retired and are coming with a lot of skills and experience to the club, and they're looking potentially to get involved and just, you know, as a volunteer, use their maybe skills from business to then at the benefit, and just gives them something to do. So we've seen our volunteer base grow without the sort of having to kind of push the, if you're a parent you need to volunteer. It's more, we've got this, can anyone help? And within 5 minutes there's someone within these 250 members, and a lot of new members who are really keen and are coming with a lot of experience, a lot of skills, but have the time to commit to the club. So on our current executive committee of, I think, 6, we have 2 people who are retired with very, very experienced skill sets and background, who are saying, we will, I'm happy to give X amount of time per week. So it's been fantastic from that side of things. Actual volunteers, it's not something we anticipated, but it's definitely a huge benefit to, you know, we have a large club with its own clubhouse to manage, and as volunteers it can just take over your life. So when you've got people who, you know, have that time and that experience and that skill to give, and are doing it willingly, it's been a really big bonus in terms of the sort of taking on the more recreational and social runner.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're always struggling to find volunteers, aren't we, in our clubs? And I think opening your clubs up in a slightly different way and thinking about doing things differently like you guys have, I think is really, it opens up the amount of people you can potentially get in your workforce as well, which is brilliant. Well, I'm sure I know everybody's enjoyed it, because there's been some great comments coming in through the chat, guys, so really well done. Thank you ever so much for that presentation. Really positive stuff coming through there, really good, well done. So we're moving on now. Thank you once again, Nicola and Campbell. Your Welsh cakes are in the post, so hopefully they'll arrive safely. I know one person had a difficult, well, the Welsh cakes didn't make it, but the letter did. So apologies to Tony Clements on that. Hungry postman got there first. Delighted now to move on to Rob Sage from Welsh Athletics, and he's going to just do a 10-minute presentation before the next break on equality in our sport and what sort of things we can be looking to doing in our clubs to make sure we are inclusive, and that was a really big part of what Pitreavie were talking about then as well. So Rob, over to you.
Thanks very much, Hannah. Great to be able to join everybody today. I'm hoping you can see my screen there okay. Let's get this slideshow working. It's going to be a short, sweet presentation, just looking at a little bit around kind of equality and diversity and where we are in Wales with it. So my role is head of corporate services, so it's kind of all the background stuff, comms, IT, office management, HR, governance and equality, kind of all fall within my remit at Welsh Athletics. But we've just recently reapplied for the equality standard in sport in Wales for the sort of intermediate level, just off the top advanced level. But we're really looking to kind of embed equality and diversity and inclusion right across everything that we do, from the sort of development side of things with clubs all the way through to kind of the elite level and what we do for coaches and officials. So hopefully, I'm sure it sounds like from all the presentations I've been listening to that everyone's very much kind of on board with this inclusive agenda, certainly in terms of obviously including everyone of all abilities. As this is perhaps just a reminder of kind of other ways we need to look at being inclusive. So hopefully some of you will have seen the Welsh Athletics strategy, which has kind of six pillars to it: unite, engage, own it, innovate, inspire, and lead the way, which are our kind of 6 areas. And within those, we've got some then more detailed aims and objectives. I just pulled out 3 there that kind of relate to equality and diversity. So we really want to ensure that athletics is a safe and inclusive sport for everybody. And we set ourselves a specific target of having 50% of clubs achieve the in-sport accreditation by 2026, which is when their strategy runs until. I think we're at about 20 clubs at the moment, and I know Chris and his team, Hannah and Tom and Barry Ever and Andrew in Swansea are working with clubs, looking at sort of 8 to 10 clubs a year to get that in-sport accreditation so that we can hit that target by 2026. So if you are interested in that, get in touch with your regional network officer. Obviously always looking to bring new people from all backgrounds into our sport. I really feel like running, athletics in all its formats, whether it's trail running, mountain running, jogging, social running, can be the most inclusive sport there is. You can start age 4 or 5 with some of the basics. You do your first school sports days, probably the first sports competition you do of any type is an athletics competition. And we know we still have masters competing at international level in their 80s. So it really does span the whole age range, and obviously it's appropriate for everybody. So we also want to make sure that we're removing any barriers to participation, so that we can have everybody taking part. So what do we mean in terms of what does it mean for your club? I mean, I think the first thing is it's just an opportunity. Obviously, I saw there with Pitreavie, obviously went through a period where numbers had really dropped off. And then obviously, thankfully, now it sounds like you've been on a great journey and the numbers have really picked back up again. But to discriminate, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, about any group being part of your club is just to miss out on a new audience, to miss out on new members who could be getting involved in your club. So, you know, when you look at all the protected characteristics, which I've got a list of in a second, you know, it covers so much of the population. And actually most of the protected characteristics, in order to make people feel included, is about culture and attitude. It's very little financial or practical extra things you need to do to include people. There are some for some of the disabilities, but overall, for most of the protected characteristics, we're just looking at culture and attitude, and what you do in that, it's kind of just giving everybody the respect will be of help to everybody, regardless of whether it's an equality issue or not. I was quickly going to bring up the Equality Act protected characteristics. So these are the 9 things that were part of the Equality Act. So you, under that Equality Act, you cannot discriminate for on the basis of any of these. So age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage, civil partnership, pregnancy or maternity, race, religion, sex or sexual orientation. So hopefully people are kind of aware of the concepts of protected characteristics. And I guess it's just a simple kind of checklist that you can do to run through those and just say, okay, if somebody was in the early stages of pregnancy, could they come along to our club still? And actually, when they're getting towards the latter stages of pregnancy, can we still keep them involved in our club? Can they come along and still fulfill a role so that they're getting those mental well-being benefits of socially being along? Are we as a club aware of that we might have people from different religious beliefs, different races and ethnicities wanting to come along and take part? Are we doing anything, and how we communicate with people, how we time our events, that might make it a barrier to people coming along and taking part? Simple things like sexual orientation. If you've got a clubhouse with 2 basic toilets, they're just 2 single toilets, one of them's got a male on it and one of them's got a female on it, just take the male and female signs off and just have 2 unisex toilets. So it might be a very simple thing, but it means that, you know, people don't feel they've got to fit within a label to come and be within your clubhouse. So this is the technical bit. This is section 101 of the Equality Act, relevant to members and memberships and associations, which would be clubs. So in the arrangements that a club makes for people to join at membership, they cannot discriminate. You cannot have terms within your constitution which specifically discriminate against somebody with one of those protected characteristics becoming a member of your club. Is essentially what this boils down to. It's just something to be aware of if you're part of a committee, just to make sure when you're setting up the constitution. And I know through the club's portal there are templates for doing this, and obviously there's support here from Welsh Athletics to make sure you've got those constitutions and things set up. I'm sure all of you have got sort of constitutions and documents in place that are within the Equality Act. So then it's just about how you live that, how you live those values, how you create that culture and attitude, that if somebody is visually impaired, hearing impaired, they feel like they can come along and have a go. If somebody walks through the door with one of those protected characteristics to a beginner's session, that you're ready, that the people who are greeting those people kind of know what they're going to say to them, that they're not just thrown. If somebody turns up visually impaired, is there somebody at your club who will say, oh, great, yeah, we've got somebody who's a guide runner, or they're at least, they're not just got that rabbit in the headlights thought of, oh goodness, what am I going to do with this person who's walked in on our beginner's night because we've not had to do this before. I'm a bit, you know, unsure what to do. It's just thinking ahead, really. So we've got an idea, so that initial experience for everybody is a positive one. Like people were saying before, it's so important that people have a positive experience the first time they come along. They're not bombarded by technical, difficult language, like we were saying before, but also that whatever they present as, they're going to feel comfortable being part of your club. So you can do formal equality impact assessments, and if you're a large club, you know, and you're putting in a new significant program, you may want to do that. But really, it's just about running down that list of protected characteristics and trying to put yourself into somebody else's shoes and saying, okay, well, if I was coming as a beginner, or if I was a parent looking for somewhere for my child or to come and be a part of, and I knew that my child had a hidden disability, like autism or like dyslexia or whatever it was, and they came across your website or your social media, are they going to be able to navigate it? Are they going to feel comfortable getting in touch and thinking, well, actually, yeah, if my child goes along there, I can see that they're going to be supported, they're going to have a positive experience. And so obviously to help with this, you know, you can get in touch with us. We are now working much more closely with the other home countries' athletics federations and UK athletics. We have a group of all the equality leads who meet regularly. We are looking at some more sort of resources that can be put in a bit of a toolkit as part of the wider kind of clubs resources on the clubs portal and made available to you. I think the main thing is just to talk to people. You know, I'm sure conferences like today mean you can get in touch with those of people who are running other clubs across Wales and obviously further afield. We've heard from how are other people, everyone's having to deal with the same thing. And then when people do come to you or phone up and say, you know, would it be all right if I came along? I've got a bit of a hearing impairment. Is that going to limit me when we're running with traffic? How do I cope if I'm in a group? Will I be left isolated and then I can't hear the traffic around me? Just talking to people and listening to them and then thinking about it. And then data is the other thing, which is something that we're looking at very closely, and hopefully we'll be able to then provide some insight back to clubs is, you know, what percentage of our membership have these different protected characteristics compared to the wider population in Wales? Are certain groups underrepresented, and therefore we're missing out on the opportunity of new people being part of our clubs and bringing new skills, new enthusiasm into our sport. So yes, that was really it from me. Short and sweet, just a reminder, a bit of a prompt for everyone to think about it, and obviously to just be aware of the sort of essential things you need to do under the Equality Act. So yeah, thank you. That's it from me. But obviously here, if anyone wants to fire any questions at me, Hannah.
Thanks, Rob. That's really good, and I think a really useful reminder for people to just be having that in the back of their mind all the time with their club activity. We are now going to go to a break. If anybody has got any questions for Rob, if you want to pop them in the chat, you can answer them there. That's absolutely fine. Some good positive comments coming through, Rob, so well done. Nice presentation. Must say, I'm just going to comment on your lovely wallpaper, because those of you that have been following our Welsh Athletics webinars will know there's a bit of banter with Finn's wallpaper as well. So I think you might be rivaling his wallpaper.
Yeah, well, I thought I'd compete with it today. You know, turn off all the filters, just go with what's in the background today. So
Fab. Oh, there is just one question coming in, Rob. Don't know if you can see it as well. Has Welsh Athletics identified from its members any particular groups who aren't joining clubs or being accommodated, retained by clubs?
I think it's difficult. I mean, I think we are underrepresented across quite a few. If you compared it, what's difficult is obviously certain areas of Wales will have different populations to other areas of Wales. But I think we probably across the different races and ethnicities in the bigger cities, so obviously Cardiff, Newport, Swansea, perhaps, particularly, let's say Cardiff as an example, there's quite a big Somali population. I don't know how many Somali members we have across the different clubs taking part in athletics, for example. Disability wise is a difficult one, because I think if you look at the population, it's something like 10 to 15% of the whole population who have a disability of one form or another, whether that is mobility issues, hearing impairments, unseen disabilities like autism, dyslexia, all those sorts of things. I guess when people join a club, if they don't think their disability is an issue, they maybe don't declare it, and they don't say anything about it, so we're not recording it. So I think one of the biggest challenges we have is data, to be honest, and having that accurate data, and that's something we are working closely on, and then we can then feed back that kind of insight to clubs. But I think the key thing is just be open to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rob.